So why don't we call to order at 5:32? And let's see. Oh, Sharon's on with us. Perfect.
Yep.
All right. So first order of business is to approve the attached minutes from the February 24th, 2021 meeting. Can I get a motion?
Motion to approve the minutes.
Second? I can second. All right. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Is Sharon with us? I just want to make sure we get her eye if she's. Can we hear her?
I did promote her. It looks like she might still be connecting to the audio and video.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just taking her a second.
Yeah, I'm not sure why, but her mic and camera icons aren't showing up next to her name either.
Okay. All right, let's see how she does. Let's hold off then, just to make sure we get, because we need hers, I think, her vote, right, to complete the quorum for tonight. So let's hold off. We'll circle back
Okay.
to the approval at the end of the meeting. Okay, couple things on our agenda tonight. First of all, we're going to do some quick subcommittee updates. So these are kind of standing items that we talk about at each meeting. And then we got some pretty significant conversation around two new business items, which is the second newsletter content and the community outreach plan, just in preparation for the community outreach plan conversation. This is kind of a high level overview. Oh, there's Sharon.
I'm having technical issues. I'm sorry.
It's all right. Don't worry about it. It's everybody's life at this moment. Around the community outreach plan, we're going to have kind of an high level overview here, but kind of we want to make sure that some detailed conversation also is going to happen at our next meeting with the entire building committee. So this is kind of a preview, general conversation, some high level communication points around that that Ira wants to make sure we touch on. And then obviously we're going to continue the conversation, roles, responsibilities, things like that as we move into the building committee meeting in our next hour together. So let's start with some subcommittee updates. So website updates, I don't know, Devin, Cara.
Yeah, I can take that.
Okay.
We haven't added anything since our last meeting. We are working on a introduction video. Ira is finalizing that, so hopefully that will be up by the time we meet next.
Mm-hmm.
Cara and I are also working a little bit on building out some of the side-by-side photo stuff, which I can get into when we get to that agenda item.
Excellent. Great. Any thoughts, comments, questions from the committee around website updates or anything? Any feedback they want to provide? I think it looks great. You guys are doing a great job keeping it up to date. All right. Ira, we have you on here as a standing agenda item. Do you want to have more specific conversations or anything you want to cover here?
It's up to you, Meg. It's more getting into specific things we're working on versus that we're been in touch. And I think as we have the discussion here, which really falls under new business, community outreach and the role would probably be hold that off instead of, unless you want to go through it right now, but it's your call, Meg.
Yeah, we can pull it. We can push it there. I just want to make sure if there's anything else you want to touch on outside of that conversation, we give you an opportunity to. I think that's really what we're working on right now. So,
yeah, I mean, it's just generally we have 4 or 5 major initiatives going on between the website outreach, working with the outside groups in terms of where they want to be in supporting a project. Once the referendum gets posted, the roles of people, elected, appointed, schools, meetings we're planning. I think that evolves around the calendar. Is Kat going to be on, Devin?
I don't think she'll be able to make this meeting. There's a chance she might be able to join our 6:30 meeting.
Okay, so Is that calendar she's still working on, or is that done? Do you know?
No, we have it.
Oh, you
yeah.
have it? Okay.
Yep.
We have a draft. Yeah.
Because that would be the major,
Correct.
what I would see is bringing that in, how we're going to manage going forward, this calendar of activities, who's doing what and what we're doing.
Yep. Okay.
That's my update.
All right, perfect. Yeah, so we'll get that into number 2, the second new business item in more detail. So side-by-side photos. I know this is something you've been working on too with Devin and Cara, I think, right?
Yes. Right now, we're just going through. Scott, I want to thank you for getting that done. We're doing some editing right now, and Cara and Devin have got a first crack at it. I sent back some edits, but there's no sense posting it up right now. It's a work in progress, and we'll have this by next week because, in a sense, this is going to be the presentation going forward to community groups, whatever. It's going to kind of explain on what's currently existing, which is broken into these components. And Scott, you did a good job of breaking this all down, all these components, your video, and I went through that again, and how we're looking at what's currently going on in the high school. The belief is that many people just don't understand the current situation at the high school. Meg and I had a talk that you had a walkthrough, was around 1.5 years ago. Did any of you go on that walkthrough? You remember?
I think we all did pretty much, right? Everybody remember the engagement meeting we had where we had all the community members come in?
Yes, I think we were all there.
Yeah.
All right. Was there any comment, any follow-up, anything from the people there? You said, Meg, you thought there were 200 to 300 people on that walkthrough?
I would say, does that sound right to everybody? About 200, maybe a little bit more, I think.
We can get that. We have, because at the end we had everyone sort of put a sticker next to which, what their preference was. So we can get a better number on that for next meeting if you're interested in that.
Was there any feedback at all afterwards, or getting a sense after you gave the tour about, what their reaction was? Like, have many been there before? It's like the first time they really took a really comprehensive tour. This is something I know it's going to be very hard to do during the COVID world, but I know from doing these projects, walkthroughs and showing things. So this side by side is kind of replacing that walkthrough. So that's probably the context I'm giving. But if there was any feedback or the people who went through or anything, that would help out maybe focusing some of the areas that we're more concerned to, particularly, people who are just not there day to day.
Yeah, so Ira, we had, after the way that it was crafted, and it was done with, I believe, students who were part of giving the tours. So the idea was to show individuals who attended just how long it takes to get from, sort of a day in life of a student. And they brought them to, we focused on the 5 major components of the needs, the necessity, the statement of needs. Thank you.
Yep.
And then everybody gathered at the end in the auditorium and put a sticker next to what they felt was after seeing everything, what they felt was the most important out of those 5 needs. So whether it was energy efficiency, or it was safety and security, or it was the NEASC stuff, ADA, all of those things. And so there was some overwhelming or overarching ones that were more important than others. I think energy scored the least. I don't remember the order of all 5, but we should have that information kicking around. And so they had an opportunity to talk to committee members. So it was interesting to hear just some of the feedback that people were giving. Wow, I had no idea how long it took to get from A to B, or just because of the sprawling layout and lots of different things, right? No idea about the dead end hallways and how many doorways there are to get in and out of, or you had to go outside to get from one side to the other, kind of thing. So
if you have any notes, anything on that, I was unaware about that. I just want to match it up with this before and after to see if there's comments and so forth. This becomes the major tool for why there's a new high school needed. We need now to go into the phase that, so the newsletter that went out was great response back. Some people are now aware. Now we have to make them aware, but, educate them about why we're doing this. This goes back to the survey, and I mentioned this to Meg and Cap, is that when I went back, I did an analysis, and we had, there were the negative comments, mostly about the taxes, which, there's nothing you can do about when people want to do that. And unfortunately, it's mostly people, when I looked at the demographics, they lived in town over 20 years, they're retired. So I assume they're seniors, and that's understandable. The other group was the positive comments, but the ones and then the ones with questions, and then the ones with comments. Those are the ones that are in between. And those are the ones who are basically saying, okay, I'm interested. I want to know more. Please explain more what is wrong with the current building and why a new one's going to alleviate it and make a better educational experience. That's the phase we're going to go into right now. So, because this is what always gets lost, because what happens, the discussion then evolves around the cost of the building and the building. We want to talk about the educational aspects and how the space is limited in terms of what teachers and educators want to do. And the only way to do that is to demonstrate before and after and saying, here's what's going on. We've done presentations at high school where actually the teachers get up there and explain, I love the kids, I love teaching, but the building sucks. And we went through this in Rocky Hill, and we had 900 people in an auditorium. We had the tour, and it just changed everything because the teachers were standing there and explaining, said, look at this, look at my lab, my science lab here. Look at what's going on here. They're then able to explain how the education system could be a lot better if we, in case of Rocky Hill was renovated, it's new, not a building. So that's the concept I just want to make you aware of and going forward. Otherwise, and then we have this script and we have this Prezi or this slideshow that kind of shows this. And so it's a way of more of explaining than selling. And because then you want to appeal to people's sense of, that this is something that is needed because of these situations. Scott, did you concur with that stuff? I mean, your notes kind of say it.
Yes, I do, Ira. Absolutely. And then just for your knowledge, I don't know if this is pertinent. So we did the evening community tours on October 16th last year. So we had people go around to each of the major needs. And then I don't have the date, but we also did a full day on a Saturday.
That's right.
When people, we had community members come in. That's when we were looking at the two different designs, and we offered tours on those days as well. So I think between those, we did really well with engagement. And those were obviously both pre-COVID. But I'm glad to hear that the video script and outline there was helpful for your.
We're doing some editing right now. I appreciate your enthusiasm, but we have to dial some of it back. It's in terms of doing that. Again, do you have information? So this was another tour that was given, different than the first one?
Yeah, they were both led by students, and then of course there were two separate times where the community, and within the last year prior to COVID, that the community was able to come through the building.
Were there any comments you gathered or anything that was feedback that was documented?
Yeah, I think that's what Devin and Mark. So we did the stickers on the October 16th, and then on the other piece, folks were able to leave feedback as well. I think that was more designed around the actual building designs that were being presented by the two firms that were involved, however. But I believe we have that, as Devin had mentioned.
Right. Yeah, we definitely have everything documented. I'll just, we'll have to do some digging, and we'll get that over to you, Ira, for sure.
Scott, one more thing. Have you identified some teachers? Remember we talked about who live in town, their kids went through school or currently?
Yes, sir. I have a list from Farmington High School and then every other school in town as well for folks that live in the community. So we have teachers at all of our schools who are residents in town, and then I have some from the high school as well.
Would they be willing, a next step here, and this probably has to be answered also by Kathleen, being willing to either be participating in a Zoom meeting like this or give us a statement, audio statement or written statement talking about particularly the high school situation, and then about the kids, particularly the teachers who have kids who are going through the high school. It would be really helpful to have that kind of thing documented.
Yeah, no, I have commitment from several teachers from our school and then from the other schools who are willing to speak on behalf of the project as they, from both a parental perspective and then also working in the building for whatever we need.
All right, so can I just arrange with you separately on that or work with whoever, Meg?
Yeah, let's, no, I think that's fine to work with us on the side with that. Absolutely.
Okay, thank you. That's great news.
You got it. You're welcome.
Thank you.
Okay, I think that's some of the talking points I know you wanted to get to today too, about side by sides, what the purpose of those are, what it's we've been talking about them for so long that I think we now are seeing the application of that work and how we're going to be able to apply that and use that tool
Yeah, I think
moving forward. So
yeah, right, Meg. We now have the copy, we have photographs, we have the rendering. So we have all the components. So we're putting that all together and hopefully next week you'll see that, you approve it. And this then becomes a major presentation all the way up through up to referendums.
Yep. Okay, that sounds great. Before we go on to our two new business items, which are pretty significant, just want to make sure if anybody else has any, oh, Beth, you're sideways. You were sideways for a second. If anybody has any other updates or questions or thoughts as to anything else we've talked about so far. All right, so let's just jump right into the new business items. So topic number 1 is to discuss the content of the second newsletter. So Ira, I think you're going to kind of walk us through what we're thinking as far as high level content and timing around this.
All right, I think you're muted.
Yep, you're muted, Ira.
I was cheating. I was getting a little snack. This is a really late lunch for me.
I know 5:30 is tough.
Yeah, this is lunchtime. There's going to be 3 kind of components that's going to go into the newsletter here. What we wanted to do was bring together, Meg is having a letter introduction, where I'm going to write an article about the highlights of the survey. I just got them all back, all 1,200 of them. And so I'm going through some of the comments in there a little bit more. So I'm going to do a deeper dive in terms of doing that. We're also going to have on here on Meg's letter, there's 2 items we're adding. One is about the 1928 building, how that's been taken off the plate. And the other one's going to be when we're having discussions with some of the outside interest groups, is making sure parents are particularly registered to vote. So we're going to put this information in. You won't be able to vote on this unless you are registered. So we're going to have a link on the site, on the newsletter, where people can at least go in and find out. Some people, not even if they're registered or not, they think they might be. But we've run into this in the past where actually parents go to vote and they weren't registered. Of course, it doesn't make any sense to anybody, but that's what they end up doing. So we're going to have that. And of course, Meg's mentioned the article about this. We're going to talk about the calendar and the timeline, what we're going to be doing out there. We're going to also be talking about where these events are all going to occur, and so forth, and a couple of Q&A questions that we just went through right here, which is maybe this is probably one newsletter where we can be a little more active, more advocate about the preparing people from the presentations that are going to be going out about and hearing from the educators and the parents a little bit more. And so we want to engage that kind of community into this. So that's what we're going to highlight in here and show that, there's an organized approach to how getting information out. Again, it's more about information, dialogue, and advocacy was saving for probably the last newsletter a little bit more. And so that's so it is. And the roles and responsibilities of all the important people in the community and groups and appointed and elected officials, their roles and what they're going to be doing. So the sense of this newsletter is showing that there's an engaged community. Everyone understands it, from our elected officials to volunteers, to PTOs, to teachers, the community at large, interest groups behind it. And that's the tone of this newsletter.
Anybody have any questions or thoughts for Ira on that?
Hi, this is Sharon. I was wondering, in addition to putting it into the newsletter, is there any way that we could get some information out into the patch that's online? Because I'm hearing a lot of things from the community that people are reading a lot of things about the high school on digital, going onto the computer. So I'm wondering if we could put something on there.
Well, what we're going to do is, in Meg's letter, we're saying to people, if you're getting information from other than this official source from the website, you're getting misinformation. In other words, people, the problem today is people go where they'll put a query out, and all of a sudden they're on Facebook. And at Facebook, someone might be saying something, all of a sudden, oh, I didn't know that was going on. We have to drive people to where the official information is. And so the official place for that is the website. So constant reminding people to go there, and then have this kind of presentation, which then says, here, look at this presentation, look at this short video, look at this. This is all about what you need to know. So this is still a huge education component, Sharon.
Okay.
You know, social media it's like, I call it a lazy man's way of finding stuff versus going to where they need to do things.
But can you put a reminder on there though, just so people could go to that website and see it? So
Oh,
the
yeah.
information, they could see that. I think that would be helpful, as well as the Farmington Valley News that comes out about once a week or every 2 weeks.
Yep, good
People
point.
read that. I don't know. I'm seeing the enrollment in the Harper Current going down in other newspapers, and people are really going more on the computer. I know Wendy had mentioned it last week at the meeting.
Well, we also have subscribers to the site. We now have these other email lists. And so
Okay.
these are people interested. So what we can just do is send out messaging right away to them.
Okay.
Basically, Meg, what we do is take your letter and send that out to all the other groups who might not read the newsletter, or they're just not getting it, or we can then they can have a hot link
Yes.
right
Okay,
away.
that'll be helpful.
Ira,
Go ahead.
Yes,
I actually had two things, so I don't want to mix my thoughts here, but in terms of the content of the newsletter, are we going to also add pictures? Because I know you had mentioned a lot of content, and I envision that as a lot of text, but I know a lot of people are visual people and they love pictures.
oh yeah, this is gonna have a lot of pictures.
Okay. And then my second suggestion was, or question was, are we going to take this newsletter and could you turn it into a PDF that could then be pushed out either through a listserv or somewhere else? Because I know, being on the board of another organization, the newsletter that usually comes in through snail mail was kind of delayed in the winter time because of all the mail services, and that became an issue. So I recently just got a PDF version of the newsletter, and I thought that was efficient. So wasn't sure if that would be a possibility in this case.
When the first newsletter was done, Darren, that's posted up as a PDF, isn't it correct?
Yeah, we have on the website. Yeah, we can make it a little more obvious about where it's located.
Yeah.
Yeah, we can definitely.
Yeah, Wendy, when we create this, we make it a PDF automatically. And so it goes up right away on the website.
Yeah, I thought that would be the process, but just I guess the wondering about the dissemination of the PDF, like if that's something that can be pushed out.
Well, this is where our discussion, you're leading perfectly into our discussion we've had with Meg and Kat, that we have to drive it out using all these other vehicles, the social media that Sharon brought up. This is now how you use social media. This is where you go to get official information. You use Facebook, these groups, the PTOs, all of them right now need to get this information and then send that out directly and saying, here's the new newsletter. Here's the before and after. So all that is be done, because there's only so much you can do on the printed. The printed stuff is important because it reaches people who don't do that. I mean, we're talking mostly millennia. They live their whole lives on social media. Gen X, around 50-50. Baby boomers, it's 75-25. And if you're a senior, it's 90-10. So we have to we got staggering of 4 generations. And we understand all that. So that's why we send a paper one out. But now we got to go really directly, mostly into the parents who are completely on social media. So it's a good tip, Wendy. It's the same with Sharon. We now recognize digital is the way we have to go in many of these areas, and getting it organized that way. Now that the website's done, we're updating videos, updating when it's necessary so people can find it. But the next step is actually organizing and getting addresses and getting people, what are they using? Give us your listserv or give us whatever. And could you please post this? And so that's the gathering that's going on right now.
So this is Beth. So would you say, Ira, that around the time of the release of the newsletter is when we would be, actually you'd have to do it beforehand to get ready, but we would be working with these groups and also gearing up our own social media, because we have a FHS building project Facebook page that I think right now is just pushing out the agendas when we're live meetings and then the chair report. And that's pretty much all it's been, which is fine. But now I think we need to ramp up and start, if we're doing a video, if we're putting new content on the website, how are we pushing that out on our own social media and then continuing to drive people to the website from our Facebook page. But then also, like you mentioned, PTOs and other groups, our email list and what we're pushing out and when, kind of as a comprehensive plan to hit people out.
You're absolutely right. Right now, it's important to gather where these groups are and, their distribution system. And therefore being able to give it to them so they distribute it. Because right now we don't have a lot of that. I mean, we know the PTOs can do stuff right now, but they're going to be very limited once the referendum gets posted, the quiet period. The PTOs cannot take the active role. So they can do it right now. They can get a lot of stuff out right now, and that would be a big help.
And this newsletter will hit before the...
oh, yeah. There's 3 newsletters. We got one coming now and one the end of April.
Okay.
And so they're going to be that. And then presentations, again, that's the calendar I guess we're going to go through. It shows what we need to do. But I think if any of you as a group know these groups beyond, because we can get the PTO stuff. It's, I've been in talk with, United Farmington, also the other group, and what kind of roles they can do right now, and then versus what we cannot do once the building committee website possibly will come down. We've had this discussion that the town attorneys might say, I'm sorry, you can't use it anymore under the election laws.
Right.
So that stuff has to migrate over to somewhere else.
But for now, you're looking for maybe people on the committee, whether it's communications or the Fuller building, who have networks with booster clubs, friends of music, the drama club, parents, and that sort of thing, to roll this content out and pass it along. Okay.
The superintendent has identified 2 to 3 people, most of every school, that are going to act as advocates or help out the PTO or independently. So now right now is the time to do all that before the election laws kick in.
Right.
So advocacy can go on as much as we want right now. There's nothing illegal about that. So it's getting these people organized, lined up, and that's what we've been, Meg's been working very hard with Kat on this to identify us all, asking Scott to identify teachers. So now we have to gather all the people, in my business, we call it the bodies, who are going to actually go out and play their minor role. So if we have enough people out there doing advocacy, we end up reaching, by the time the PAC groups get engaged, pretty much the message, the awareness, the education down. So no one can go in there saying, oh, I don't know what we're voting for. I have no idea what this is about. Because my estimation is now you barely got 10 to 15% of your population that's more than just aware, they might just be kind of, I think there's a project going on, not quite sure what it's about. That's most of your town right now. And maybe 10 to 15% are a little bit more aware. So we have to bump it up to 50%.
Yeah.
50% awareness and engagement. That's the phase we're in right now.
And I think that's when we look at, you know, kind of our starting point of this calendar that we're going to walk through, we can really layer the social media engagement on top of that.
Right.
And have some, but I think what you're also identifying is, you know, we need clear direction to building committee members and beyond to say, this is what needs to happen. Well, the content is there. We need
Right.
you now to use your resources and engage.
Yeah, I mean, I'm almost envisioning like a holding their hand and saying, okay, would you sit down tonight for 15 minutes and go on your Facebook page and invite every one of your friends who live in Farmington, who have a stake in the school project, invite
Right.
them to FHS build. I mean, it's that granular, and it's almost like you have to.
Yeah.
Or, I
Yes,
mean,
Be very specific about it. I agree with you.
yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, Beth, you got it. You guys have it what it is. This is really in the face the best we can do. And if we have to use Zoom meetings a lot, but since things are backing off a little bit, you know, maybe there'll be a little bit more direct contact, but I wouldn't plan on it. I still think the Zoom world is going to be pretty much how we're going to be communicating. But if each group, if you think of it, it's kind of like a Tupperware party. If you can arrange little Tupperware parties, and we used to do that with these projects. You know, the neighbor would bring over all the neighbors and say,
Yep.
here, you know, then, you know, that's the master of ceremonies, and they introduce the expert. If you kind of think of, they can be these Zoom meetings, kind of like Tupperware parties. That would be, you know, that would be the way to think about it. It can be broken down by neighborhoods. It can be broken down by groups. That's why Kathleen gave us all these names, that we're going to ask them to do that.
Great.
Okay, before we jump into the calendar, because I think that's a good segue into that. Emily, did you have a question? Or thought, comment?
I see that someone else has their hand raised right now. Let me see.
Hi, everyone. It's Rafina.
Oh, hey, Rafina.
Hello.
Hi. Ira, I was just curious about the language that you're going to use on the newsletter to say that the building committee website is the only trusted authority, because Comprehensive FHS all along has been mirroring the building committee information on our site. And in the event that the building committee, the town attorneys decide that that stuff can't stay up, then you've kind of put us in an awkward position because our tagline is your trusted building information source. So I'm just curious about how that wording will go out on the newsletter.
Well, at that point, you can take as much of the content prior to that and use it and build it, at least the important components to it on your site. It's perfectly legal to do that.
Well, no, I'm not asking about the legality. I understand that. I'm saying that all along we have been following all of the information that's housed on the building website is mirrored on Comprehensive FHS's site. So
Well,
just in case the town attorney decides, sorry, I'm driving, so I might break up a little bit. I'm sorry, did you say something?
No, that's perfect. There's nothing wrong with that at all. You know, it's as long as if you're directing it back, then you're mirroring that is absolutely perfect.
Let me jump in here,
Right, but-
Dina. Let me just clarify, because I wrote the message that's going in this newsletter. The message that comes from me is going to direct them to, if you have questions, comments, thoughts, go to fhsbuildingproject.org. That's what I say. We don't say, and don't go here or anything along those lines. We just say that's our source of information. If you have questions or comments, go there. So there will need to be, at some point, we're going to have a conversation, but right now that's where we want people to go.
Right, and that's where we
conversation.
have been directing, right,
Correct.
I understand that, and that's where we have been citing every single thing that we say in
Correct.
whatever format it is, it always leads back to that. But again, do we have any more clarification from the town attorneys whether the site will be up and running come referendum time?
I have to talk to Kat about that. She was looking into it. Devin, have you heard anything?
Not at this point. I haven't heard anything, but yeah, I think Kat would be the better
Okay.
source for that.
Yeah, I think, Rafina, we should assume the worst case scenario right now.
Okay,
We should plan for it, knowing that's going to happen. And if it doesn't, it's great. But you're actually doing what you want a lot of other groups to do. that you become an authority voice that, you know, runs parallel and with the building committee. That's perfect.
Right, so that was our plan all along, because whatever misinformation, I think it was Sharon that mentioned about how people get their information. And that can all be countered by, nope, that's not exactly what was said. Here's what
Right.
was said, and
Right.
point them directly or give them a link on Facebook, on social media, on whatever platform they're using. So.
Yeah, no, that's great. If we got all the other groups to do the same thing, we'd all be on the same page. That's wonderful.
Okay, thank you.
I have a question right along those same lines. Would it be appropriate, inappropriate, useful, counterproductive to mention the PAC in the newsletter, or does that cross a line? Just so people, what is comprehensive FHS? So if people see that, they know from us that it's a legitimate group and kind of what their purpose.
I would stay away from that. That should all be worked in the background through other groups.
Right.
Okay. You can't, if you're going to be an advocate for that, that's going to raise the ugly heads of people making like, oh, you're showing favoritism. We have to be kind of, Caesar's wife here, pretty neutral about everything.
Right.
So we have to, right now, we're mostly information and engagement. If you think of everything we're doing right now, it's information and engagement. So the engagement now has to ramp up. We're doing what the building committees want to do, which is trying to engage, because we have all the information we need. We don't need to reinvent that. It's a matter of getting people to understand and get the right information, because misinformation goes out there and people go to their comfort levels. And you made it very clear, Sharon, that's what people do. Where we want them to go isn't necessarily where they end up, and then they get wrong information, and that becomes then the gossip and the town crier environment. And it came pretty clear in the survey results. People hate that, but that's how they're getting information. So it's a dichotomy and a conflict with what you guys are doing. So the more we ramp up right now, the less we're going to be misinformation. And then with the anti-groups in town, you just want to ignore them. Just don't even engage them, because no matter what you say, they're going to do what if. It's not worth it.
All right, why don't we, Devin, can you pull up the calendar?
Yep.
Quick?
I do see that there is another hand.
Okay.
Did we want?
Yeah, one more question is good.
Okay.
Hi, everyone. It's Sam Reisner.
Hey, Sam.
I just want to follow up on what Rufina said. I think there's a significant concern that I have that as you drive people to your website that will unfortunately likely disappear, or that you're planning on disappearing, that there's going to be a significant sort of vacuum of information, and people will look at that. There will be conspiracy theories and what happened to all the information. So finding ways to help make sure people know that your site and information is a great resource up until 30 days before, but making it very clear that now that will possibly change could be very important, as well as we're mirroring the documents. We're annotating that they're a mirror and the reasoning for that on the comprehensive FHS website, but helping people, like, we are not linking on our website and in our communications to your site, because we do not want those links to die when your site goes away. So we are trying to encourage people as much as possible to link to a location that will persist and is guaranteed to persist. So we know that you can't link to us, but doing things to help make sure people understand what's going to happen, why it's happening, and how they can get, that there are places where they can get the original information. I think that's going to be really critical to avoiding kind of confusion.
Yeah, I agree, Sam. I think, this is kind of the handoff, I think, that we're going to have a conversation on. We can do our job, I think, as a building committee, to say, to have a conversation with people around, the information that we have out there, their ability to view that information. And obviously this message will be, tempered based on if we do get different information from the lawyer. But that working on worst case scenario, that as of whatever it is, that May 3rd, May 11th timeframe, it's going to look different. And then we're going to have back up against it, and here's a way you can get the information. So I think you're right. It's that handoff that we have to be, pay attention to and make sure. Yeah, go ahead.
Absolutely. And I just want to encourage you to, as much as possible, push on the attorneys, understand what options there are to keep as much information as possible open. Yep. You're generating public records now, and to remove those, lock the site, do what you need to do, but as much as possible to leave that open. Mm-hmm. I think that's really important.
Okay.
Yeah, I would agree. I think where we, depending on what they come out with, maybe they'll give us some sort of preliminary idea of where they're coming from with what can stay and what can go. But it really should just be the stuff that gets eliminated would be anything that sounds more like advocacy or pushing, to vote a particular way rather than information. And I think up until now, I think we've done a really good job of just having it be real informational, factual. So if we keep on that path, I think we'll be fine, but we want to keep an eye on that. And then I think the other thing with the issue that has been raised with comprehensive FHS, I think there's two sides to it. Meg, I agree. It's it is somewhat of a handoff and will be even more so when we get to that, 30 days or the official quiet period. But from our perspective, Sam and Rafina and Marcus, I think what we're relying on is you all to ramp up as much as possible and get your own constituents and, make known what you're doing and what your role is out in the community and develop those networks and get the word out on your organization so that your people already know ahead of time what you're doing, what your purpose is, and that they can come to you for information, particularly around that quiet period. So, as much as work together on that now.
Beth, the way to look at this is that you have two campaign dates. You have right up to the posting. So in other words, you treat it like people are voting the day before the quiet period.
Yep. And
then you have the quiet period to the actual referendum. That's how we're designing this right now. So it's as people are voting May whatever date is.
Mm-hmm.
So they have enough information. What goes on with the PAC groups or out there, their job is for engaging and getting people to vote.
Yep.
Our job up until the building committee is engaging them to understand why they should vote.
Right.
So one is, you shouldn't have to, when a quiet period comes, shouldn't have to go out and explain this over and over again. I mean, it doesn't mean it doesn't go away, but it should be more about, are you for this? Good, get out there and vote, because, it's just the way I've seen these campaigns. So if you're really organized, the ones that I've seen, I've been involved with succeed, we treat these as two campaign dates.
Mm-hmm.
And therefore, because right now you can be as advocate as you want.
Yes.
And then I'm sure you guys all know this. And then afterwards, the job of the people 30 days out who are being involved, which all can be all of you, doesn't matter, that their job is just you get people out to vote, and particularly the last 2 weeks. And so that's their role.
Right. I just wouldn't want the public to only be hearing about comprehensive FHS on a large scale in that last couple of weeks. Do you know what I mean? That, it's more of a familiar name leading up to that. So the handoff is.
Yeah, it's a matter of, all the groups coming together, who's ever engaged in helping this, working as a team, working and coordinating.
Right.
You can't, that, and explain to the public why, we can't, the town council, the board of ed, the building committee can't go out and as a group say, go vote for this.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And that's, and once that limitation, that's what gets people confused about these campaigns. They don't sit there and read the election laws that go on for 20 pages about what you can and cannot do. Our job looks like it's just seamless. It has to look seamless.
Right.
Yeah, not an easy answer, I think, on that, but I think, if we stay, I think we've been talking about it, we know about it, we need to just, all put whatever effort we can into making sure that we're communicating, that the PACs are thinking, that everybody understands that, there's a significant change in communication a month before. And, you know, try to be as clear and concise and repetitive on that as we can without making it more difficult to understand. So, all right. So just in the last few minutes, I just want to make sure that we get before we walk into our meeting at 6:30 to do a more detailed review of the calendar. I just want to show everybody kind of the approach here of, you know, our next very important time frame, which, you know, you'll hear me talk about in the next meeting with the entire building committee, that really our focus is shifting. And it's significant at this point that the shift is, we have been so heads down on solution and design and understanding how to present the right option that meets the statement of needs and all the things we've discussed. And we're there and we've got it. And it is fantastic when you really step back and take a look at it. I mean, it's really a fantastic solution that meets the needs. It's the right time. And it's really what I think not only the students need, the district needs, but the community needs at this time. So, you know, we're going to have to start shifting our focus, as Ira has talked about, on really educating people around that, around the value of this on so many different levels. So the calendar that you see in front of you is really talking about how do we get in front of people to share that enthusiasm, share that information, and make sure people understand that, you know, this is an important decision that needs to be made. They need to go out there and vote, and they need to be engaged in this decision. So you'll see, we're not going to go through everything that's on the calendar. We'll do more of that in our next meeting, but just some high level things and topics and kind of formats more that we're thinking about. So we will obviously continue with our communications subcommittee meetings moving forward, as we are super important in this process, as well as our building committee meetings, to stay engaged and make sure the project stays on track. But we are also introducing, as you can see there highlighted in green, is neighborhood meetings. The very first one right out of the gate next week is the Highlands meeting. So this is, we know this is a very important engagement and one that's very specific because of the impact of the new building to that neighborhood specifically. But then from there, we go into neighborhood meetings based on elementary schools. So we have an East Farm neighborhood meeting, a Noah Wallace neighborhood meeting, a West District neighborhood meeting, and Union School neighborhood meeting. And so thinking about that more in a neighborhood view, and having people come together that know each other and have a conversation, and hearing people speak that they know because it might be their neighbor or their kids go to school together. So trying to really get some focus around that from a neighborhood perspective. The other thing that we're focusing on as well is a PTO meeting that you see there on the 1st. So I know Scott and Kathy have been working very hard on how do we get the PTOs engaged. This is kind of one forum, but we'll also be asking them to engage with us on those neighborhood meetings as well, representation within their neighborhoods, again, to help us support the effort moving forward. In addition, in purple there, you see topic meetings. So this is a general result of the information that Ira pulled out of the surveys of some big topics that we need to address and give people the opportunity to come and listen and ask questions on. So this is really an engagement meeting for the community. If there's a specific topic they're interested to learn more about, these will all be recorded. People can go back and watch them. So again, informing, having people really understand the value and how this solution is really meeting the needs. So you'll see those one every week. In the month of April, that's also going to be accompanied with neighborhood meetings as well as our standard communications meetings. So you're going to see this level of communication ramp up significantly moving forward, because that's our job now. Our job has now switched to, as Ira said, communication, education, and really getting people to understand the value of their vote here and how they're engaging with us and, you know, with the other people that obviously support our efforts as well. So that includes the PACs, that includes PTOs, that includes getting the teachers that Ira talked about and that Scott mentioned, is how do we bring all these people together in a way and give them opportunities to speak and share their experiences and share their support of the project. So we move right through from April into May in the calendar, and you'll see those dates in red that are important to us. Standard practices we need to do, BOE meeting approval, all the things that we need to do to make sure we're preparing for referendum. Another community meeting there on the 4th. Again, our meetings will continue, and then the town meeting on the 24th there. That's in preparation for that beginning of June referendum date, which is right now scheduled for the 3rd. So really what our job is going to be is, and so as I mentioned before, I think what we can do now is if we're laying it out this way, and we have a clear understanding of who's engaging when and what support we need at each one of these, community engagements. I think that's important for us to do, understand what people's roles are in those meetings, and then layer on the social media support on top of this to not only promote attendance, but also get the information out that's shared at these meetings so that people have all sorts of ways to get at this information and all these tools that we're creating. Does that make sense to everybody, at least at the highest level?
I think also with Sharon and Wendy, whoever else is on, Scott, take this calendar and you fill in the other places where presentations have to go on. And that's where the groups are going to come in, other groups, from Rafina and stuff. So it coordinates what's going on. And then you can use the materials. Same here, Beth also, I'm sorry, to use the materials to go to presentation to those neighborhood groups, other groups. This is meant on a level to reach, working through particularly elementary schools and through the PTOs, mostly, getting to the elementary parents. That's the focus of it. And using the topics as a way of addressing some of the major concerns that were addressed in the survey. So we're covering everything as a building committee should, but in terms of filling in the gaps would be all those other dates and openings that can be done in neighborhoods or the PAC groups or the other interest groups in the town. Even building committee members can pull together a group of people and do a little, Tupperware party kind of thing. It's and I think that's why we did the calendar was saying, here's how we see the building committee going forward, and then taking the lead and then filling in other groups or individuals who want to get together and make this material available for them, because that's our job. So if we know a group wants to get together, they would call Devin or even me or Meg and say, can we use the slide deck? How can we use this stuff? And that's what our job would be, is providing the tools for your presentations.
Hey,
So
Meg.
we see.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
Oh,
This is Sharon. Last fall, we were down at the soccer field, Meg and I. Are they going to be playing soccer for recreation this May? Because that would be a good place to be as well.
I believe soccer's been running all year. A lot of outdoor sports.
Okay.
Right.
Okay, so would we be able to have something down there at the field this May? Would that be acceptable, or should we wait?
Depends on what our restrictions are, Karen, just because of that time frame.
Okay,
In May, like where can we now? Can we show up as individuals? We absolutely can, not as representation
Okay,
of
we
the
couldn't
building.
have
But
all right, we can't have a display then,
yeah,
early May,
well, if as long as it's before the
6 weeks.
the cutoff. I just want to be careful of our time, Wendy. I don't want to cut you
Right.
off. Go ahead.
I just wanted to know, you had two of the dates in April 12th and 14th. That's the week of April break. And I think with Lamont kind of lifting some of the restrictions, I'm hearing of families traveling. So I just don't want to miss out on those neighborhood meetings for Union and West District if families are planning to take that week and travel. So just wanted to note that.
Okay. Yeah, we can take a look at that, Wendy, and see if it makes sense to move it down a week, double up a little bit, or think about how we then engage those recordings. I think we have to kind of feel that out and see, but I think we can move it around a little bit. Okay, I don't want to, not that I want to cut the conversation short but we'll continue it around this calendar in the next meeting, but I want to give people enough time to log off, walk around a little bit before we hop back on our next meeting. So at this point, if I could get a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn. It's Wendy.
I'll second it.
All right, discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, unanimously approved. We will adjourn at 6:27 and I will see everybody in a few minutes.
Thank you.
Aye. Thank you.
Thank you.